Why Fantastic Four should have a fourth installment in the MCU. Why should the MCU bring the Fantastic Four back in Phase 4? Simply because they are Marvel's first family. They are legendary, and they are dynamic as they traverse through extra dimensions and constantly engage in missions millions of light years into other galaxies. Here's a breakdown of why and when the MCU will bring back the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four hype begins. Marvel Studios is not only set to bring the Fantastic Four into the MCU.
The brakes!
They aim to make the Fantastic Four the epilogue that wraps up Phase 4 of the MCU properly. Phase 4 is currently the MCU's most diverse chapter of Marvel Studios' ever-growing cinematic universe. New characters are beginning to be introduced more than ever, while other franchises are going in exciting, refreshing directions that are set to maintain and expound on the Marvel comic universe. And of course, this will only be possible with the rights of the characters back in Marvel Studios' control. Even though Phase 4 of the MCU won't commence until 2022, and actors haven't been cast yet, and there is no known screenwriter attached to the reboot, the plan is manifesting. However, we do know that Jon Watts, the director of the Spider-Man trilogy, Spider-Man Homecoming, Far From Home,
I are not so different.
and 2021's No Way Home is helming the live-action project. The schedule of Phase 4 is already stacked, but the creators realized that Fantastic Four as the last final project would be significant to introduce Phase 5. The key difference between the first three phases and the fourth is that each volume was building towards Avengers films. With the exception of Phase 1, every other slate
Scared me there, Smokey.
has had an Avengers installment as their penultimate movie. With the completion of MCU's Infinity Saga, Phase 4 is a different entity that focuses less on a larger payoff and develops other corners of the interconnected universe. So, when MCU's Fantastic Four is released, it will be the first time the four heroes are in the same world as the Avengers, Spider-Man, and the Uncanny X-Men. This is amazing news and quite significant, especially since the Fantastic Four would be back with Marvel Studios. Had Disney's acquisition of 21st Century Fox, now 20th Century Studios, never happened, it's unclear whether or not Fantastic Four and X-Men would ever be under Marvel Studios' roof again. Moreover, since the MCU's Avengers 5 doesn't seem to be on the table for the foreseeable future, Fantastic Four is the perfect ensemble film to close out Phase 4. It would be appropriate for the Fantastic Four to get their MCU debut at the beginning of Phase 4.
Sometimes.
But perhaps MCU heads would be more thrilled if Phase 4 goes out with a big bang with MCU's first family. Everything you need to know about the MCU cinematic phases. About a decade ago, we were all enthralled in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with Marvel Studios referencing several films at once. Those films, so far, have been compartmentalized into three phases. Phase 1 introduced us to each of the Avengers. Phase 2 dealt with the fallout from the Avengers. Phase 3 features an uneasiness among the superheroes after Avengers Age of Ultron, and that amazing movie, which you should have watched in 3D, introduced us to more heroes that provided the spearhead into Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. So Phase 4 will introduce a new wave of heroes and explore a post-Endgame world where half of the universe reappeared 5 years after the event known as The Blip. Phase 4 began after Spider-Man Far From Home, which was the last lead-up to Endgame. Now, have you already seen Black Widow? Because that is the first movie of the MCU Phase 4. Here's a breakdown of the MCU phases in chronological order. MCU Phase 1. Iron Man, 2008. Robert Downey Jr., as Tony Stark, had the brass to publicly admit he is the Iron Man, becomes an MCU staple. He is approached by Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson, who sets the stage by saying, "I'm here to talk to you about the Avengers Initiative." The Incredible Hulk, 2008. Bruce Banner's origin story is revealed, played by Edward Norton. Although it's part of the MCU, Marvel replaced lead actor Edward Norton with Mark Ruffalo. Iron Man 2, 2010. The revenge tale plot of Iron Man 2 introduced two new characters, James Rhodes, played by Don Cheadle, who becomes War Machine, and the first appearance of Black Widow, played by Scarlett Johansson. In the aftermath, It leads to Thor, as S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Phil Coulson goes to New Mexico to investigate Thor's mystical hammer, Mjolnir. Thor, 2011. Thor was the ultimate film on the cosmic scale in the Marvel Universe. It introduced us to Hawkeye with S.H.I.E.L.D., and the post-credits indicated the beginning of the Avengers. That led to Captain America, the first Avenger being produced in the same year. The Avengers, 2012. After 6 movies and 4 years in the making, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye joined together and electrified international audiences while defeating Loki, who was armed with the Tesseract and Mind Stone. And unknown to us at the time, Loki's strings were actually being pulled by Thanos. MCU Phase 2. MCU Phase 2 began in 2013 with Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World, where Loki was portraying his adoptive father Odin and Thor's love, Jane, was infected with Aether, which was the Reality Stone. Captain America: The Winter Soldier of 2014 is a political thriller that follows Steve Rogers on the run from Hydra as he teams up with Black Widow and Falcon. In the same year, Guardians of the Galaxy was released, showing fans the extent of the Marvel Universe, more Infinity Stones, and hints of the story of Captain Marvel. By 2015, Avengers: Age of Ultron depicted Tony Stark's attempts to build an AI called Ultron to operate as a peacekeeper for Earth. It was the turmoil that had Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver join the Avengers.
Strange.
And Vision, a synthetic body with Jarvis's AI and the Mind Stone materialized. And the last cinematic film from the MCU in 2015 in MCU Phase 2 was Ant-Man. MCU Phase 3. Phase 3 of the MCU opened with Captain America again as a rebel and fugitive in the 2016 hit Captain America: Civil War. It could easily be considered Avengers 2.5, as most of Marvel's superheroes had an appearance and chose a side. It was either adhere to the required registration or face the penalties. Outside of the Civil War, yet still entangled in it due to a bloodlust of revenge, Black Panther was introduced and Tom Holland's Spider-Man had a righteous cameo. In 2016, we only saw one MCU major hit with Doctor Strange. But in 2017, we had the explosive Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, where Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, comes face to face with his father Ego the Living Planet. 2017 was an action-packed year for the MCU, as we were thoroughly entertained by Spider-Man: Homecoming, taking place after the exhilaration Avengers: Civil War, where Peter Parker was still being mentored and sponsored by Tony Stark as he battled the Vulture played by the 1989 superstar in Batman, Michael Keaton. Next came Thor: Ragnarok, which was a definite all-around crowd-pleaser, as it showed the team-up of Thor, Hulk, Valkyrie, played by Tessa Thompson, and surprisingly, Loki. Finally, in 2018, Black Panther hit the silver screen and even had the Vice President of the US crossing her hands on her chest and proclaiming Wakanda forever. Black Panther continued the phases by paving the way for Avengers: Infinity War, where the beings of the universe realized that there truly is a universal war, not for freedom, but for existence. Towards the end of the film, we see Nick Fury give a distress call for his biggest gun, Captain Marvel. But before Captain Marvel had her big scene on the silver screen, Ant-Man and the Wasp showed Marvel fans just how developed their skills were and how innovative their tech is as they discover the quantum realm. This would be the lead into Avengers: Endgame of 2019, as that quantum realm was needed to rectify the devastation caused by Thanos. But before Endgame came about, we were able to witness the power of Captain Marvel as she crash-landed on Earth and befriends Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. The last spectacular cinematic film of Phase 3 was the spectacular movie Spider-Man: Far From Home. And now we move on to the adventures of Phase 4 of the Marvel Universe, where in a couple of years, we'll be seeing Marvel's first family as the leg in the MCU's Phase 4. Leave your expectations about Fantastic Four and Phase 4 of the MCU in the comments section. Give this video a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time!